What was your worst Tinder date?
One guy met me. We didn't even meet for drinks. We met for coffee at a Starbucks, and I think I got tea. And then when we went out to the car to say goodbye, we like chatted for a little bit, and he was fine. He was like this Middle Eastern guy, maybe Israeli, something like that. And he
Ooh.
came out to say goodbye to me, and he just like shoved me up against the car and stuck his tongue in my mouth and like grabbed my ass. And then when I was very polite about it. I was like, "Hey, not into this right now." And then I like got in my car and left, and he started texting me all this stuff like, "You stupid bitch, how come you weren't like," he's like, "You went on this date with me expecting nothing to happen." And I was like, "We met for coffee. This wasn't like, yeah, it's not like we met somewhere and I came to your, I think he was embarrassed that he got
handle the
rejected.
rejection.
Did you send him a D-bag tax?
I should have. That's where I should have sent the D-bag tax. I would have been like, "You fucking asshole."
Yeah, the D-bag tax is just a way for like women to get back at dudes. It's like I don't think it actually is about the money.
What was your like worst date experience ever, Chrissy and Brittany?
Oh,
bad first date.
Okay, so mine was bad first date. Okay, yeah, I don't have a lot of first dates, honestly. But the guy was he was from Hinge, and this is back when I was in New York, right before I left. And he was like we were getting along through text. He was like a former model, and like we were relating like, oh yeah, the industry and how they are very predatory, blah blah blah. So then I go to meet him in person. Oh wait, actually backtrack. So initially it started out really good because he was nice. I had to go to the hospital over a migraine. Never met this guy before, but I was with my friend Ash. She was with me at the hospital. It happened right after ice skating. So then he texts me about dates tomorrow. I'm like, I'm in the hospital. And he's like, oh, like, do you need a ride? And I was like, sure, my friend's with me. And he was like, okay, I'll come pick you up. So he picked us up, and he was really nice. And like, he dropped us off. And then the next day is when the first date happened. So I go to meet him. I'm like really anxious because he's really tall, and I hadn't learned to like cope with that. I get like a little bit like around like guys who are tall, and it's really embarrassing. But I've since fixed that. Anyway, so we go on the date, and we go to the coffee spot, and he's like talking nonstop about himself. So he's just like I guess he looks like the stereotype of like a Chad, but he's a ginger. And he eventually keeps talking about himself, and I'm just like purposely. So I'm still fucked up from the migraine the day prior, by the way. So I'm like purposely sitting at the table like this, like trying to like very carefully not show any body language in any direction, because I want to know what he actually thinks, right? I don't want him to be like, oh, she likes this, I'm going to say this or blah, blah, right? I'm not trying to get manipulated. So then he goes on and says he's on steroids. Like I accidentally got him to admit he's on steroids.
Okay.
Because he works out, and he was like a big guy. So I was like, oh, you like the bodybuilding competition? He's like, yeah, I want to enter one. I was like, oh, but like, what if they like do steroids? He was like, I was like, oh, are you doing steroids? Like, because he got uncomfortable. And he's like, oh yeah. Then he proceeds to tell me about how he's still in school, and he like takes Adderall. So he's like addicted to Adderall. He's like, this is my first 3 days off of it or whatever. And then he goes to say like he has a tattoo on his ankle, and it's like one that he got from him and his friend being drunk. So like there's like plenty of red flags at this point, but like I'm naive and too forgiving, and I was like, oh, but he's attractive though. So then we go to the next spot, and we go to walk in the park a little bit before we get dinner. And we're just talking like normal, and out of nowhere, he's like, I can't breathe. I think I have allergies. And then so we immediately leave the park, and he's literally having a full-blown panic attack. This man is having a full-blown panic attack, like on the floor, like and this is in Brooklyn, by the way. So he's like, we're going to the corner store. I got him some allergy meds, and he's like trying to calm down. And I'm trying to console him, but like not too much, because like, yeah, maybe you should feel like a little embarrassed about what you're doing right now.
Oh my gosh.
God.
So funny.
Wow.
So
not consoling, not all, just a little, you know what I mean? But you gotta still be embarrassed, bro. This is embarrassing. Don't think I care that much, okay?
I'm like as nice as I should be, and I make sure he's okay. I'm like, oh, do you still want to go out to dinner? And he's like, okay. He's still like going through a dinner a little bit, but he eventually like calms down. And then after we leave, I never asked
He must
him
have been really hot.
He was a former model, so like I said, he was like the stereotype. He wasn't particularly my type though. In particular, he was just like the stereotype. Like I'm not typically into gingers, not typically in the guys that like his eye color, things like that. But I guess objectively,
his eye color clear?
It
was like powder.
It was like a dark, like it wasn't like a pretty hazel where it's like ooh, it's like ooh, rainbow, but like it was like a dark hazel. It was like kind of like garbage. I don't know. Like, no offense, people with brown eyes.
It was full of amoebas.
I think that a lot of people with brown eyes can be really beautiful and it can look really cool, but it's just like his eyes in particular weren't like that.
They didn't
impressive,
stand out,
and I'm very into eye color.
You know what? Because Brittany is an eye elitist. I mean, look at her eyes; they're gorgeous. So she can be an eye elitist. Okay,
that's so shallow. Okay, first off, how am I shallow just for stating the facts? I'm telling you the truth. Okay, I said that he looked the stereotype of what women find attractive. He was not personally my type, but he was objectively what people would call attractive. Anyway, so we are at the dinner. And we end the dinner. He's walking me home. And I never asked him at this point yet, like, oh, hey, how do you feel about porn? Like, do you watch porn? Because you guys know it's a deal breaker for me. Huge deal breaker. And I asked him, because it's like, come on, like he had a full fucking blown panic attack. I could ask if he watches porn, okay? So I go to ask him, like, so like, how do you feel about porn? Like, do you watch porn? And then he's like, he gets nervous. He's like, and then he's like, well, like sometimes, like trying to.
And you're already like
wishy-washy. Yeah. And he's like, well, like, why do you view it this way? Blah, blah, blah. He seemed like kind of open to it, but kind of defensive at the same time. Like he's trying to not like push me to the side, but he's also kind of like, oh. And so I was like, well, to me, it feels kind of like if a guy were watching a girl change through her window and she's just like undressing or touching herself and you're just like in the bushes jerking off to it. It's like very creepy to me. It's very weird. So I explained it like that. And he's like, oh. So he walks me a door and then like, I feel awkward. Like I don't like kissing on first dates. So I gave him a hug and then I was like, okay, well, he was like, I'll see if I could stop watching porn. I'll let you know. And then he never texted me again. And I'm like, dude, you had a full-blown panic attack and you're like recovering.
You walked him home.
But how dare I not want a man who doesn't watch porn?
Oh, wow.
So nothing ever. Oh, actually, there is a part 2 to this. So quickly, the part 2 is that I was complaining to my friends about. I was like, what I just told you guys. That he had a panic attack, but like he's gonna get on me about the porn thing. So and like ghost me. So my friend was like, okay, you need to text him but like do it in a way where you're like leading into it like you're being friendly. So I did. He's like, now hit him with the actually I think it's funny how, and then just like and then that's how it ended. So like make sure he saw it.
Okay. Oh,
what happened?
She just clicked herself out.
Wow.
Or maybe that's her dismount. It's hard.
That was her Irish goodbye. She's like, "Okay, see ya."
Yeah, she's like, "And bye." All right. Well, shoot, I was really trying to think of like worst date, and I honestly, looking back, like I could tell you guys so many horrible stories, but now that I have like wisdom, I know that all of my bad first date stories were really just like I was meeting somebody to hook up, and like most of my regular first dates were like fine, but the times where it was like, oh, you're meeting somebody from like whatever app and you're like, so many of those ended so horribly. So it's like, now I look back and I'm like, okay, they all had that in common.
So it was like intent behind the meetup. Yeah. I can see that.
Just about every time I would just meet somebody for like a hookup, something would go south. Like, yeah, they were all so bad.
I think I only ever met one guy for a hookup, and it was fine. I talked to him like briefly afterwards, and then that was kind of it. Like, I think he was like testing the waters to see like maybe we can hang out again. But I don't know. I didn't like him.
Mm-hmm.
It was fine. It was not bad. Not a bad experience.
Yeah. I would have sometimes, like, I remember, like, back in the day when I was, like, first starting comedy, like, sometimes a guy would, like, linger after a show and, like, it's that first initial, like, "Oh, wow, like, being funny," like, you know, you can get attention for being funny, but, like, I don't know. Ultimately, like, I wanted to, like, be the chick. I don't know. I can't explain it that well. I'm glad it worked out with Frank because he liked me, like, it was, like, funny, and I feel like also maybe personality. It wasn't just like, "Oh, I heard your set and it was funny." Like, I just feel like if someone likes that, that's a version of you. That's like and that's why there was a girl who came with a guy to the Friday night show, and after the show, she, like, propositioned me and the host and maybe somebody else, like, all to, like, get a three-way. Like, she was just going around, and it's like I kind of find that exhausting because, like, it's like you're basing that off of, like, what you think the person I am based on, like, my comedy set. I
Right.
mean, she was also hammered, but,
Yeah, she was hammered and horny. She
She
was like,
She's
you
like
know what? You was funny on there and you look
she
real
was trying
good.
to haggle me on my T-shirts too. She's like, "I bought you a drink. Can I get a T-shirt for free?" Like, I don't know. She turned me off in, like, a few ways, so I was just
Yeah,
like,
you're like, you ain't sucking my titties, bitch. Back up.
I was
Go
like
away. This ain't happening. You know what? You ain't buying a shirt. I ain't going on with you.